Matriculants and other learners are now preparing for their preliminary examinations, and this is a significant milestone in their academic career, as this period may be a clear indicator of how well they are likely to perform in their end-of-year exams. But then, how should these matriculants prepare themselves mentally for this psychologically, emotionally and physically taxing period? To discuss this with us, we're joined by education specialist Thobo Khathola. Welcome to the program. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me, Mpo.
Yeah, so this is a time where stress and anxiety levels are at an all-time high for our matriculants. This is where you have terms such as time management and discipline also being thrown into the works. Let's talk about how do matriculants better manage their stress and anxiety levels at this time.
Yeah, preparation. I always tell students that failure to prepare, the cliche, failure to prepare is preparing to fail. So at this point, especially as students are going into their mid-years, this is the time for them to really prepare, sit for past papers, engage tutors, go for extra lessons at school, and also just, talk to parents to allow them to help them with the necessary resources, time, gadgets for them to be able to prepare for their mid-years.
And also you would hear some of them come out and say that they've actually did prepare, they did study, they did do the work, but when they get to the exam, sometimes they freeze because they're just so anxious. What is it that needs to be done, and what strategies would you perhaps recommend for some of those learners?
So back to what I said, preparation, because with anxiety, I've seen that most students do understand the concepts. They've done the past papers, they understand the topics, and if you have a discussion with them or you give them a paper, they'll do quite well, but they don't necessarily put themselves under exam conditions. I'll give you an example. With the students that we're helping at Line Tutoring, where I work, is over and above tutoring them and preparing them for the exam, we give them the past papers and we simulate an exam condition, where we say all books away, all gadgets away, the same way that, whatever they hear in the exam room would recite that, and would make sure that we put them under those exam conditions, because the more they prepare writing exams in those exam conditions, the better. Some students usually do their past papers at home, in the dining room, when there's an aircon, etc. But sometimes you don't even know the exam room that you're going to be sitting at. It could be a hall with bad air conditioning. So you need to also, as much as you practice a sport, you need to simulate, that exam condition. And those are the students who normally get good marks.
And I want us to zone it back to the importance of actually having a study routine. Just how important is having a study routine that first of all works for you and also that you can actually stick to?
Yeah. And that brings discipline. Most students are not disciplined. We deal with thousands of students. For me to be able to make that deduction, because, it's like our student or the student nowadays always goes for the easy route. So if they have a exam timetable, they know, or a study timetable, they don't have anyone to hold them to account. So sometimes it actually helps to say, Mom and Dad, here's my study timetable. Make sure that I follow this study timetable. Or even your tutor to say, Tutor, seeing that you're coming to my house every day from this time to this time, make sure that by the time you leave, at least I've done my homeworks and I've prepared for the following day. So discipline and having somebody to hold you accountable. It could be a friend, it could be a family member, and it could be the gadgets that the students are using. Don't use your gadgets for social media. Make sure that you have some kind of a assistant that can help you to say, at this time I'm doing this, I'm studying, at this time I'm doing this subject, this time I'm going to bath, this time I'm eating. And also be intentional about the time that you socialize. If you need to socialize for maybe 20 minutes a day, be intentional about it and make sure that if you have said that I'm socializing between this time, when the time comes to end your social activity, make sure that indeed you end it.
And also just how important is the involvement of parents, because sometimes you gauge conversations with matriculants in your townships. They would tell you that sometimes our parents are not really that involved in what we do for school. And particularly when we look at preparation itself, some of them would even say that my parents still expect me to do the dishes. Well, we're not saying they're not supposed to do their chores, but what would you say to the parents at this point?
it's to have an open dialogue. Let the student and the parents sit down, and sometimes we do facilitate this to say, Mama or Papa, this child is writing mid-years in such and such a date and they need to prepare. So try to tone it down when it comes to the house chores, or maybe, like I say, look at the student's study timetable, stick it on the fridge so that we know that Mko at this time he's eating, at this time he's studying, so we can't bother him. And once you have an open and honest conversation with your parent about this, and once you are also following the exam timetable, one thing I've seen with our students, they would say, I'm studying science on this time, on this day. And the parent walks into the room and the student is doing something else. Or maybe they are on the phone with their friends. That's why sometimes parents are forced to say, hey, you are on the phone, go and do the dishes, So sometimes as a student also, make sure that you stick to it. Let's have an open dialogue. We also as tutors, we try to engage to say, Mama, please tone it down when it comes to the house chores. Or we'll see them over the weekend, or at least for the next 2 weeks as he's preparing or as she's preparing. Try to minimize what the house chores. We'll see them after exams or during holidays.
And talking about, those conversations, how do these young people go about starting them? Because some parents can be unapproachable at times. How do they go about opening the door for those conversations, particularly when it's about time to start such an important time in the learner's calendar?
Yeah, Mko, one thing I've noticed about the 21st century parent, they value education. Whether in the township, whether in the suburb, all parents value education because that they know that is the one investment they can put into their children that can pay dividends when they are not there in the future. It's not like having a property that you are going to invest or invest in and then give to your child. They can misuse that, but education, all parents know that their students or their children need to have a proper education. And once you have an open and honest dialogue with parents, parents are usually quick to accommodate their kids. They're usually quick to even compromise and say, what, my child is studying. If there's a family gathering, most of the parents are the ones who are saying, no, Mko is home, he's studying, please let's not bother him. Because Mko is actually doing what he's supposed to be doing. The problem is if you say you are going to study and you don't study, that breaks the trust between you and your parents. So I always also say, take it back to the students to say, please make sure that if you say you are studying, you are actually studying. Your parents will even give you the extra support. We've seen parents using their last cents to engage us to tutor their children, and you can see that, Shem, they're really trying their best. They really want to help their children to go to the next level, help their children. Some of them are slow learners. A parent will just take their last cents and say, if I can get a tutor for the child to be able to meet the academic goals, I would have won as a parent.
Yeah, and as much as this is also a time that is riddled with anxiety, this is also a time where we need to also pay focus to the mental health of these children, because sometimes it gets so bad, some of them even contemplate suicide. Just what would you say to them right now?
There's a study that we've linked between academic frustration and, as you say, suicide, and also severe mental health issues. That was done by the University of Pretoria, that the correlation was actually quite strong to students who end up committing suicide, who end up feeling inadequate, that there's a high correlation with it being linked to academic frustration. Them taking that subject and not having the right support for them to be able to meet the target. Then they feel that they are a failure. But you're not a failure. Maybe the system is failing you. Maybe you don't have the necessary support. And most of these students we see, once we start tutoring them, that maybe he wasn't grasping the concept properly in class, and he probably needed an hour, 30 minutes on a Saturday to just go over, unpack that syllabus, and they're able to reach their academic goals. So we've seen that strong correlation, and as parents, try to engage tutoring companies, try to engage even the school. Most of the schools also have remedial sessions for students to go and, those who are slow learners, for them to be able to unpack the work.
It's a combined effort indeed. So Thobo Khathola is an education specialist. Thank you so much for your time indeed on the program.